Can a continent be free if its wallet still answers to the West? 14 African nations, one invisible chain. A currency born in colonial halls still reigns in their pockets. Their flags have changed, but their money still whispers in a foreign tongue. Even today, to print its own money, a nation like Burkina Faso must still ask permission from Paris. But in 2025, Captain Ibrahim Traoré said enough. He didn't wait for permission. He made a move that shook the whole room. He launched Afro Money. And he didn't just print a note. He printed Defiance. And this wasn't just about currency. It was about courage and declaration. Backed by Africa's own gold, oil, and cobalt, Afro Money broke away from the West's grip. It didn't ask to be accepted. It built its own table. Now, ask yourself, why would a leader risk everything to do this? Why now when the world feels so uncertain? Stick with us, because this story is about more than money. It's about pride. It's about protection. It's about a continent finding its voice again. Stay with us and see how God carries this story forward. Because this is not the story of one person or of one nation. It is the story of an entire continent reclaiming its voice. Subscribe and raise your voice for an Africa that stands tall and rise. If your heart says yes, type it loud in the comments. United Africa forever. Amen. In 1960, as African nations celebrated freedom with speeches, flags, and anthems, one chain remained. It was not a weapon. It was the CFA Franc. To most outsiders, the CFA looks like just another currency. But to those inside the system, it represents something far deeper. A currency not controlled by the people, not even by their governments, but by the French treasury itself. They called it independence, but the true chain money was left behind. Today, 14 African nations still use it. Countries like Senegal, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, and Burkina Faso. And here is the reality. Few outside the continent ever hear none of these nations can print CFA francs without authorization from Paris. Their foreign reserves are held in French banks, earning no interest. Their monetary decisions are reviewed not in Ouagadougou or Abidjan, but in Europe. It is the equivalent of owning your house, but having to ask your former landlord before buying curtains. That is the CFA. Captain Ibrahim Traoré understood the weight of that chain. He saw how nations trapped in this system could not adjust interest rates during inflation, could not protect themselves during economic shocks, and could not revalue their currency to reflect their own strength. When COVID struck, France printed billions of euros to save its economy. African nations, using the CFA, they waited. When food prices surged in 2023, CFA countries couldn't subsidize imports. They had no levers to pull, no room to breathe, because their wallets were not theirs. And what's more painful, this wasn't hidden. It was celebrated. The CFA franc was branded a symbol of stability. But for whom? Certainly not for the farmers in Mali selling cotton too cheap. Not for the teachers in Togo paid in money they couldn't control. Not for the women in markets of Bobo Dioulasso watching prices rise while their leaders watched their hands tied. Even critics within France have called it monetary colonialism. But the most chilling truth, this system is legal, enshrined in treaties, protected by diplomacy, defended by elites who benefit from the illusion of order. And for decades, no leader dared to break that illusion. Until now. Captain Ibrahim's latest news didn't come with a headline. It came with a rupture, a refusal. A rupture from a financial agreement designed to look technical but crafted to be permanent. Because what is more permanent than a currency? Flags can change. Constitutions can be rewritten. But money, that sits in every pocket. It speaks every day. It defines what life costs and who pays. Traoré knew that as long as the CFA survived, so would the master's voice. And a continent cannot shout its future if it still whispers in its former colonizer's tongue. This was not about pride. It was about power. And the power to print is the power to plan, to prepare, to protect. But what would come next? The CFA chain had been exposed. Now it was time to melt it. And from that fire, Afro Money was born. They didn't announce it with drums. No red carpet. No gala dinner. Only quiet resolve and one man signing a future into existence, along with the trembling of those in power. In early 2025, Captain Ibrahim Traoré did what few thought possible. He launched Afro Money, a new African currency, backed not by empty promises, but by what was stolen for centuries and finally reclaimed. It was not a financial reform. It was a revolution pressed into paper. Most nations use their banknotes as quiet symbols. Presidents' buildings, neutral bridges. The U.S. dollar projects order with marble monuments, dead presidents, the all-seeing pyramid, and the bald eagle. No controversy, no defiance, just symbols meant to project order, stability, and timelessness. But behind that calm imagery lies centuries of war and empire. The euro parades bridges that never existed, invented icons of unity that smooth over centuries of conflict. The British pound clings to monarchy as if a crown could still anchor legitimacy. Even the Japanese yen and Chinese yuan wrap themselves in serene landscapes, temples and calligraphy images meant to soothe, to reassure, to hide power in plain sight. Afro Money rejects that script entirely. It does not flatter rulers or disguise hierarchy. It does not mask violence with pastoral scenes. Instead, it drags the ghosts of empire back onto the stage, Sankara, Lumumba, and Zinga Mandela, not as symbols of nostalgia, but as confrontations with unfinished business. Where other currencies whisper of continuity, Afro Money shouts rupture. On its notes stands Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's own son, the captain who fought corruption, launched land reform, and dreamed of true independence before being silenced in 1987. His face is not nostalgia. It is a reminder that Burkina Faso's unfinished struggle is now alive again. Alongside him are figures who carried the same fire across Africa. Patrice Lumumba, the Congolese leader, executed for refusing to kneel to empire. Queen Nzinga, who defied Portuguese armies for 4 decades with spear in hand. Now her face declares, "We never surrendered." Nelson Mandela, not softened into a smiling elder, but restored as the young radical who challenged apartheid's guns and prisons. Together, they turn Afro Money into something no other currency dares to be, not just paper, but a declaration. A chorus of voices that say, Africa will no longer kneel. These aren't portraits. They're ghosts. Ghosts that still haunt the halls of empire. Traoré chose memory and weaponized it. Even the fonts scream rebellion. Afro Money dominates the center. Not in French, not in English, but in tongues of the continent Swahili, Bambara, Hausa, Zulu. A quiet but thunderous rejection of linguistic empire. And then the coins, not tokens, monuments. Etched into metal, a map of Africa without colonial borders. Fists snapping chains, baobab trees twisting into circuit boards, roots of heritage, welded into Africa's digital future. Along the rims, banned verses, lines from outlawed poems, speeches punished with exile. Because currency is education. Every day it whispers, these are your heroes. This is who matters. This is what to remember. Afro Money does not whisper. It demands. And that is why the powerful panic. This is not nostalgia. It is psychological warfare. To praise Sankara while bowing to IMF contracts. Afro Money exposes you. To honor Lumumba's name while flying to debt forums in Paris. Afro Money shames you. It doesn't just test economies. It tests loyalty. And in doing so, it ignites something no foreign power can buy: belief. Belief spreads. Belief endures. Belief once minted is harder to kill than any army. So when the Captain Ibrahim latest news broke, it was never about money alone. It was about memory, about meaning, about standing at history's crossroads and saying, no more. He didn't need permission. He needed courage. And now every citizen who holds Afro Money carries a piece of that courage in their hands. The note is not just legal tender. It is a mirror. And for many leaders, foreign and domestic, what they see staring back is not comfortable. But it is necessary. If your nation could speak through its currency, what symbol would it carry? A face, a word, a battle cry. Tell us, If you were Captain Traoré, what symbol would you put on Afro Money? Drop it in the comments. Design the currency. Define the future. United Africa is not a dream. It's a decision. If you believe Afro Money is essential for a free and united Africa, type it loud: Afro Money forever. Amen. It's one thing to print Defiance. It's another to defend it. Captain Ibrahim Traoré understood launching Afro Money wasn't just about vision, it was about survival. Because history is brutal when Africa says no. When news of Afro Money's launch broke, it didn't take long before it reached the desk of Donald Trump. According to insiders close to the former President, Trump's reaction was sharp and immediate. They're walking away from the deal, he was reported to have said in a closed-door briefing. This Traoré kid is either bluffing or he's starting something we can't stop. For decades, the CFA Franc allowed Paris to control financial flows in West and Central Africa, while the U.S. quietly benefited from dollar dominance and trade asymmetries. The system worked because it kept Africa dependent, fragmented, and under control. But Traoré's Afro Money changed the rules. A new currency outside the CFA system. A reserve backed not by promises, but by Africa's real wealth: gold, oil, cobalt, uranium. Worse for Washington and Wall Street, this wasn't just about money. It was about leverage slipping away. Trump, a businessman, before a president, understood the power of control through currency. That's why Afro Money felt dangerous. It wasn't just symbolic. It was functional, and it was spreading. Soon after U.S., analysts began raising alarms about what they called a financial rupture. Reports warned that if Mali, Guinea, Chad, and Niger followed Burkina Faso's lead, the CFA could collapse entirely, taking with it France's influence and America's backdoor leverage in the region. Some even feared a domino effect, not just across West Africa, but across the entire global South. With Russia and China backing infrastructure and defense, and a rising youth movement pushing for sovereignty, the old tools, loans, sanctions, soft power might no longer work. Trump, speaking later in a private event, allegedly quipped, "This isn't just money. This is a rebellion in disguise." And he wasn't wrong. Afro Money doesn't just challenge old systems. It exposes them. And for leaders like Trump, who built their strength on deals, control, and dominance, that's more than an insult. It's a threat. Captain Ibrahim Traoré knew that launching Afro Money wasn't just about vision, it was about survival. Because history has shown when Africa dares to break free, retaliation follows. Silent, surgical, devastating. He studied the failures, the quiet topplings, the mysterious crashes. He asked a different question. Not just how do we create a currency, but how do we protect it when the first attack comes? Because it will come. When Thomas Sankara challenged foreign debt, he was assassinated. When Libya's Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed dinar, NATO jets followed. When Patrice Lumumba turned to self-determination, he vanished into the jungle. Afro Money would not walk blind into that fate. Its first defense, the code. Afro Money's digital backbone runs on a blockchain infrastructure fully built and hosted across sovereign African data centers. No central bank in New York, no servers in London, no clearance from Brussels, just a decentralized network housed in Mali, Niger, Guinea, and Burkina Faso. These servers are air-gapped, physically isolated from the internet, protected by state-run cybersecurity teams trained to detect not only technical hacks, but economic warfare. It's not cryptocurrency. It's something far more radical: digital sovereignty. Each transaction is verified in real-time, peer-to-peer, without passing through Western-controlled payment systems like SWIFT. So if the West tries to freeze it, block it, track it, they can't. Captain Ibrahim's latest news didn't just speak about freedom. He encoded it. But tech alone won't save a nation. So Traoré built shields with Africa's own weapons, its resources. Afro Money is backed by a multi-resource reserve model: gold, from Burkina Faso, cobalt, from Congo oil, from Nigeria, uranium from Niger. Unlike currencies pegged to a single commodity, this basketed reserve makes it extremely difficult to devalue or destabilize. Drive down gold. Cobalt holds. Oil drops. Uranium sustains. It's not just finance, it's economic aikido. Africa's abundance finally used to defend itself. And then came strategy. Afro Money is not rolled out to all. Not yet. Only military-led or reformist governments in the Sahel form the first circle: Mali, Niger, Guinea, and Chad. Allies who've already broken with France already stood against the tide. This phased rollout reduces the chance of sabotage from within by financial elites tied to foreign interests. Then comes the parallel trade system. Just like Russia built SPFS and China built CIPS, Africa is quietly developing its own independent payment rails detached from SWIFT. Even if sanctions come, Afro Money nations can still trade with China, Russia, Turkey, and one another on their own terms. And here's the most brilliant move: Traoré isn't using Afro Money everywhere at once. He's starting with key exports commodities the world can't afford to lose: gold, uranium, cobalt. If buyers want access, they pay in Afro Money. They don't comply. They don't buy. It's not war. It's leverage. And leverage, when backed by unity, is power. Still, Traoré knows the enemy wears many faces. Some smile in meetings. Others whisper in boardrooms. Many walk the halls of African ministries. That's why Afro Money's strongest weapon is belief, because even the best technology fails when no one defends it. But belief once planted can grow roots deep enough to weather any storm. And so today, in villages, cities, marketplaces across the continent, a quiet revolution circulates. One note, one coin, one system, designed not just to survive, but to stand. Would Afro Money exist without President Ibrahim Traoré? Type "thank you" to honor the man who turned currency into courage. A strong currency can survive sabotage. A strong economy can outlast sanctions. But a divided continent will always bleed. Captain Ibrahim Traoré understood Afro Money, no matter how secure, would fail if trapped in a broken system of borders, checkpoints, and tariffs designed not for unity but for extraction. To truly rise, Africa must move. Today, crossing from Burkina Faso to Ghana with a truckload of maize requires more paperwork than shipping that same maize to Europe. Not because of geography, but because of legacy. Colonial trade routes were built to ship resources out of Africa, not across it. That's why Afro Money was never the end game. It's the cornerstone in a wider vision, one built on three pillars: the currency, the corridor, and the passport. Let's start with the trade corridors. Under Traoré's blueprint, new high-speed rail lines and pan-African highways will link landlocked economies to ports, farms, to factories and villages, to value chains. Electric grids, internet cables, and water pipelines will trace those same paths, creating not just roads, but arteries for a living continent. Then comes the passport. Afro Money's sister initiative is a single African passport, one document that lets any African live work and travel across the continent without visas. A direct strike against the Berlin Conference's colonial borders, still haunting our maps in 2025. No more foreigners between Senegal and Sierra Leone. No more waiting rooms in Nairobi for Nigerians. No more lines drawn by old empires. The third pillar is financial. Afro Money unlocks the fluid movement of wealth. With over 40 currencies currently in use, African traders lose millions each year just converting local money into dollars, euros, or francs, then back again. Imagine a cocoa farmer in Ivory Coast selling directly to a chocolatier in Kenya. Today, CFA, euro, dollar, Kenyan shilling. 4 conversions, 4 fees, 4 delays. With Afro Money, 1 transaction, 1 currency, no foreign bank in between. This isn't theory. It's already beginning. Days after Afro Money was launched, Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't hold a press conference. He didn't stand before cameras or read a victory speech. He simply dressed in a plain cotton shirt, tucked a single note of the new currency into his pocket, and walked. No security detail, no reporters, just silence and sandals on red earth. He passed through the dusty roads of Kaya, stopped by the morning market in Dedougou, then sat at a cracked wooden table in a small tea stall on the edge of a village. No one recognized him at first. He looked like any other traveler. Quiet. Watching. Eyes heavy with something distant, yet deeply present. A woman selling peanuts noticed the note in his hand when he paid for salt. She laughed and said, "First time a piece of money made me want to keep it instead of spend it." A young cart driver nearby joined in, shaking his head in disbelief. "Before I'd send my goods and wait weeks for the money to circle through Paris, and back losing half of it on the way. Now, one click, one transfer. Feels like magic." Traoré didn't speak much. He nodded, listened, then asked the same question again and again. "Is it enough?" An old man leaning on a wooden cane, his eyes clouded by dust. And years answered softly, "Not yet." But it's the first time I've seen something built from the roots, not just the leaves. As the sun dipped low, some began to recognize him. Slowly, quietly, people approached. No selfies, no speeches, just handshakes and gratitude. A young girl stepped forward, no older than 12, her dress worn but clean eyes steady. She held out two things in her small hands, a brand-new Afro Money coin and a paper crane carefully folded from a crisp Afro Money bill. She looked up at Captain Traoré and said quietly, "My mother told me Sankara dreamed of this. Maybe now he can rest." As he took the delicate crane, his eyes paused on the folded note. For a moment it seemed the printed face of Thomas Sankara, sharp, unflinching, was looking back at him. Not just printed ink, but presence, as if history itself was watching. Not with judgment, but with a kind of silent recognition. Traoré said nothing. He looked down at the coin, the map of Africa, without colonial borders glinting in the sunset. He simply placed the coin in one pocket, the crane in the other, and nodded once, not to the crowd, not even to the girl, but perhaps to the man on the note. A vow passed quietly between past and present. And it was understood. Burkina Faso latest news shows that inter-African trade using Afro money is being piloted in mining exports, agricultural bulk sales, and energy transfers, starting small but scaling fast. More than efficiency, this brings identity. Europe built the euro to unite after war. Africa builds Afro money to reunite after theft. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, signed by nearly every nation, is the soil. Afro money is the seed. The corridors and passport. The sunlight. Together they create something never seen before in modern history, a unified African economy by Africans for Africans. And the numbers are staggering. A market of 1.4 billion people using one currency would be the largest common monetary zone in human history, surpassing even the European Union in population and natural wealth. That kind of unity shifts everything. It means Africa no longer negotiates as 40 fractured economies, but as one. It means no more waiting for aid packages while exporting trillions in raw materials. It means setting prices, writing contracts, and defining value on our terms. But this unity is dangerous to those who benefit from Africa's division. Because if the people can move, if the goods can move, if the money can move, then Africa rises. And that's a risk some are willing to kill to prevent. Every currency tells a story, but Afro money does more than that. It tells a truth some people are not ready to hear. This isn't just about economics. It's about identity. It's about power. It's a mirror held up to the world, and not everyone likes what it reflects. France was the first to react. For decades, the CFA Franc allowed Paris to control West and Central Africa's economies without a single soldier. Reserves flowed quietly to the French treasury. Policies were shaped in European boardrooms. Influence collected like interest. But Afro money breaks that contract. Afro money ends that system. It doesn't wait for permission. It walks out. And France understands the risk isn't just about Burkina Faso. If one nation leaves the CFA Franc and survives, others will follow. And the influence France has long held in West and Central Africa could disappear, not just legally, but for good. Then came the reaction from global financial institutions. The IMF and World Bank have shaped African policies for decades through loans and financial aid. But those loans often came with conditions: cut public services, privatize basic needs, open the door for foreign investors. Afro Money removes the need for that model. A currency backed by real resources like gold, cobalt, and oil doesn't need strings attached. If African nations no longer need loans from Washington or Brussels, they are no longer controlled by those who issue them. The corporations were next. For years, global companies have taken advantage of Africa's fragmented financial system. A weak or unstable currency let them buy cheap and sell high. They mined cobalt in Congo, oil in Nigeria, uranium in Niger, and made enormous profits with little local benefit. But Afro Money sets a new standard. It gives Africa a way to set its own prices, to negotiate from strength, not desperation. Yet perhaps the hardest resistance comes from within. There are African leaders and elites who have built their careers on the old system. Some keep their money in foreign banks. Some benefit from complicated exchange rates and foreign-controlled markets. They attend global summits calling for change, but act differently behind closed doors. For them, Afro Money is not just inconvenient. It's a direct challenge to everything they've built. Because Afro Money is about more than money. It's about memory and accountability. You can't honor Sankara while supporting the same financial chains he died fighting. You can't print Lumumba's face while following the rules of those who erased him. Afro Money holds up a simple standard: walk the talk. And some don't want that standard to exist. History has shown the danger. Leaders who challenged financial power structures like Sankara, Gaddafi, Lumumba didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their lives. But this is not the 1960s. The world has changed. So has Africa. Today, the revolution doesn't come through speeches. It comes through what people carry in their wallets. Every person who uses Afro Money becomes part of the protection. Every citizen becomes a line of defense. That's why Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't move alone. He worked with other nations: Mali, Niger, Guinea, Chad. They coordinated. They prepared. And now, as the noise of opposition grows louder, it proves one thing: Afro Money matters. Because if your money is still controlled by someone else, your independence isn't complete. And if the world is trying to stop Afro Money, it means they're afraid it might succeed. The greatest threat isn't failure. The greatest threat is belief. This time, it's the wallet that roars. They said Africa couldn't do it. They said sovereignty was a dream, not a plan. They said we'd always be borrowers, never bankers. They thought we'd stay divided, tribe by tribe, flag by flag, coin by coin. But something has changed. Captain Ibrahim's latest news wasn't just a policy shift. It was a message etched in metal, printed in ink, coded in blockchain. Afro Money is not just a currency. It's a correction, a confrontation, a commitment. It tells the world we remember Sankara. We honor Lumumba. We stand with Nzinga. We will not bow. But memory alone is not enough. We must protect it. With our actions, with our trades, with our truth. This isn't just Traoré's battle. It's yours, mine, ours. Because if we fail to defend this moment, if we allow the old system to claw back control, then our children will inherit not freedom, but fragments. So we ask you, will you believe in a money made for you, not by them? Will you support a currency backed by what Africa owns, not what it owes? Will you speak up before they shut this down again? If your answer is yes, let the world hear it. Let it ring louder than any sanction. Let it shake more walls than any speech. If this story stirs something in, you don't just scroll past. Like, share, speak up, subscribe. So I ask you, those standing with Africa, are you ready to carry this flame further? Are you ready to speak up when silence feels safer? To stand tall when it's easier to bow? The headlines about Captain Ibrahim will change tomorrow. But one thing will remain. The dignity of Africa is not up for negotiation. Say it loud in the comments: Africa rise. God bless Africa and Burkina Faso. Don't let silence erase our voice. Amen. Every comment is a reminder that we're still here, that justice still stands, and it cannot be erased. Because Africa is not just catching up. We are building our own systems from the smallest acts on our own terms. Thank you for standing with us here. We'll see you in the next chapter. A chapter they wanted hidden, but we will never let that happen.